I think we're probably good to go ahead and get started. So before we jump in today, I did just want to let all of our attendees know. Unfortunately, there's been a bit of a mix-up. Angela's having some trouble joining us, so she's not with us at the moment, but hopefully she'll be able to pop in partway through. If not, I know we've got some really great conversation coming up between our two panelists, so I think we'll go ahead and proceed accordingly. We just want to say thank you so much for joining us for our second Dialogues event. So we're going to tell you a little bit more about this collaboration soon. But first, thank you so much for joining us today to talk about finding work in the age of COVID-19. As I'm sure you are all extremely aware, finding a job is difficult enough without a global pandemic on top of the challenges of navigating a system of inequalities. So we want to share with you some stories of resilience and the skills that you will need to succeed from our wonderful panelists that they've used from multiple sides of the job hunt, and looking forward to sharing those with you today. So I'll go ahead and jump into our event schedule. So this event is a little different than your average panel discussion. So we'll start out with a little bit of an introduction on the theme to kind of prime everybody and get us all on the same page. We'll move into our panelist discussion, and we have some questions for Ritesh and Dylan today that will anchor our discussion. And then we'll go into, so this panel and the group discussions are actually about the same time. So we'll go into, after this brief panel discussion, small group discussions that will have a panelist and a moderator in each room that will give you, the attendees, a chance to discuss and talk through some of the same issues, reflect on what you've heard and what resonated with you throughout the panel. Excellent. It looks like Angela was able to join us. So Nino, Tiffany, if you wouldn't mind getting her set up while we do the intro, that would be great. Awesome. All right. So I'll go ahead and I'll turn it over to Nino now to introduce Being.
Hi, thank you, Kat. My name is Nino, and I will be representing Being today. We're a team that consists of me, Jamie, and Tiffany. And it is an initiative that is part of advanced design. So with Being, we believe that as designers, our creativity and passion are strongest when we maintain our well-being and our mental health. And as of now, there are limited resources and organizations that address this issue. And there are a few that actually cater to this growing need. And because of this, we as a community have not allowed ourselves to dispel the growing pains of isolation, self-doubt, and anxiety that is a common byproduct of pursuing this career. Support brings awareness, and that is what we hope to accomplish today. And we are here to support.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. Tiffany, did you want to add anything?
No, I think Nina is taking the lead on the Being introduction, but we're happy to have you guys.
Awesome.
Being's a really homegrown initiative within advanced design that we hope to continue to build off of with this awesome partnership with Design Allyship. And I'll let Kat explain what Design Allyship is and how it is so great in contributing to the design community.
Oh, thank you, Tiffany, for the little intro. So this is an organization that I founded with T. Chang in late 2020 to provide designers with resources to basically help orient and center the experience of marginalized designers and encourage allyship from across the industry. So one of those tools that we created is our written guide, How to Be a Better Ally to Women in Industrial Design. So you can download that at designallyship.com for free. And basically, we want to create resources that can be shared and distributed, and basically starting conversations and dialogues along with creating spaces like this one that center the experiences of all designers from different backgrounds. So we're really looking forward to having conversations today that can help share those lived experiences and help us all be better allies and supporters to each other. All right, Nino, if you'd like to talk about this collaboration.
Oh, yeah, sure. So with this, Being and Design Allyship dialogues have created a series of group discussions that center around professional development and marginalized designers. So what we're hoping here is we hope that we can foster empathy within the community as well as build bridges with future design allies. We create these dialogues to make space for women, Black and Indigenous people of color, as well as the LGBTQIA and more. And those who are also like differently labeled and designers from marginalized groups. Um, we wanted to create this to share our collective wisdom and lived experience for the betterment of the design community as a whole. And what we're aiming to do is to create a platform for designers of all stripes and background to speak honestly and openly about what we can all do to make the industry a better place. And now I'll just bring it back to Kat. Thank you for that.
Awesome. Thank you. So before we dive in too deep, we wanted to share some resources that we've put together. We do want to set a disclaimer that the work of this collaboration and of the Being initiative does focus on mental, emotional, and social well-being. So while we ourselves are not trained mental health professionals, we believe that it's still important to create a space for discussing topics that are often left out of the narrative. This is a platform of both self and community care. So with that being said, touchy subjects are bound to arise, and this is a safe place to discuss our thoughts and feelings. However, if at any point you feel uncomfortable with something, please do whatever is best to ensure your comfort, whether that's taking a break, talking to somebody, or addressing it right there on the spot, reaching out to a moderator. When entering the space, we agree to the Advanced Design Code of Conduct. So this means we're going to show up for ourselves and for each other by being intentional about the ways that we learn and communicate here. All right, so we're going to dive into the background for today's discussion. So for those of us who did not get a chance to attend our previous dialogue, we discussed the intersection of identity and imposter syndrome, and we'll be building on some of those themes here today. And a lot of this framework came from a really excellent Harvard Business Review article by Rushika Tulsian and Jodi Anburi, so we highly recommend checking that out. But basically, the theme of imposter syndrome here is that the impact of systemic racism, classism, xenophobia, and other biases was absent when the concept was developed. So many groups were included from the originating study, namely women of color and people of various income levels, genders, and professional backgrounds. Even as we know it today, imposter syndrome puts the blame primarily on individuals without accounting for the historical and cultural contexts that are actually foundational to how it manifests for people of different experiences. This imposter syndrome directs our view towards fixing the people at work, fixing ourselves instead of fixing the places we work. So today we're going to discuss how the larger experience of finding work intersects with imposter syndrome, which can loom so large during this time. So imposter syndrome obviously comes into play when applying for jobs. The very act of selecting positions and roles to apply to affects your own perceptions of your skills. Do you apply for a job if you only meet some of the requirements? Is the issue really that you're not confident enough? We've all heard this statistic, men apply for a job if they meet only 60% of the qualifications, but women apply only if they meet 100% of them. So I'll let Nino give a little more context to the study.
Actually, to add to that, there was a study in 2014 that was done by the Harvard Business Review, and they surveyed about 1,000 working professionals, and the number one reason that both like men and women cited as the reason why, or like the reason why they're not applying for a job, is that they didn't think that they met the qualifications to apply. So with this, like we're understanding that the problem isn't an individual's perception of themselves. It's mostly the lack of information about the hiring process. And there's different rules that people play when they are applying for jobs. And we're slowly peeling back some of the realities of the hiring process. And hopefully through some of these, through today, we can help inform your decisions and future decisions on when some people can like bend some rules along the way to help you further or kind of like land that job.
Yeah. Yeah, and one of the big themes that we'll be discussing in the conversation is controlling what you have the power to change, and not being a gatekeeper for yourself. So, like what Nino said about having all of the information, if you know that you don't need to be qualified for 100% of the qualifications, you can submit your job application confidently, knowing that you have the same information and you're working off the same assumptions as everyone else. That being said, the hiring process is still fraught with bias and inequality, from who gets interviews to how hard you can actually negotiate for your salary. So much of this is outside of your control, but you can alleviate its impact by resisting behaviors that gatekeep your own success. Second guessing your decisions and your worth is normal. Feeling like an imposter, that's normal, but you don't have to let it stop you from pursuing your goals. And all of that brings us to the fact that failure is inevitable. At some point during the process, you will be let down, you will be declined, someone will say no, you won't get the dream job. No matter how many great tips you receive from events like this, newsletters, Instagram posts, one truth remains is that the job market is absolutely crazy right now, and you will very likely be rejected many times before you succeed. But by staying resilient and remaining mindful of your mental health throughout the process, you can find self-care strategies that work best for you. Practice these on a regular basis and make space to celebrate both your victories and your losses. So I would like to give our wonderful panelists a chance to introduce themselves, and then we'll just give a really quick disclaimer on the way the groups will be set up before we get into the panel discussion itself. So Angela, if you'd like to go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi, Kat. Thank you so much for that introduction. And let me just say, absolutely so impressed with these organizations that you guys have created. These are such valuable resources for designers. I wish I had these organizations when I was a young designer. I think that being a designer is very challenging and it's very competitive. And but yet the world needs designers today to help solve so many problems. So I laud all of you guys who are compassionate and compelled to be in this industry. A little bit about me. My background, I've been my undergrad was psychology, went to Pratt for my master's in industrial design, was a designer to design director very quickly for about 5 years, and then moved into recruitment. I have 2 agencies, 2 businesses right now, 2 companies, Yay Ideology, Talent Strategies, where we work with employers to understand talent, to attract and retain talent in both recruitment as well as professional development. Companies work with us to help them build their design team, understand how to invest in design better. Also, in all the years that I've been in the world of recruitment and talent strategies with employers, in more than 20 years, we came to realize that majority of creative professionals don't really understand all the different aspects of what they have to be aware of to become successful and to really understand what it takes to build a successful, thriving career in design. Thus, our other program that we have, which is Thrive by Design for design professionals. We work with design executives and design professionals to help them understand where do they want to pivot to next? What do they want to do? What do they want to achieve? What is their worth? And so that's our work on the consulting side with creative professionals. So an absolute honor to be here with all of you guys today, and looking forward to sharing the insights that we've come to understand around building a successful career in design.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for joining us, Angela. I think it's really valuable to have the perspective of somebody who's kind of on the other side of the hiring and recruiting equation, and who really knows those sort of insider insights. Thank you so much for the intro. Ritesh, would you like to go ahead and share a bit about yourself?
Yo, what's up, y'all? Can y'all hear me okay? Are we vibing? All right, cool. Look at this dope shirt, by the way. I just got this at the thrift store called L Train Vintage. I'm really vibing with it. First of all, I prefer no one uses really my pronouns, just use my name for discussions, which is totally fine. but I'm a UX and UI designer and product manager. Basically, help build digital products, but have secretly wanted to go into industrial design and fashion stuff just for like fun purposes. And so if anybody wants to create a fashion line, let me know. Or dope chairs. I'm really passionate about bringing people of color and non-binary folks into the industry. I'm using the word industry to mean design, which is obviously very broad. I'm very passionate about mentoring and working at mission-driven companies. I'm also a volunteer for Where the Black Designers, an organization that's been around for just about a year. Our second annual conference is actually happening later this month on the 26th and 27th. And I'm proud to say that I'll be actually moderating a session there. I love public speaking. I swear a lot. I bring my full self. I make jokes that sometimes I only think are funny. And so I hope you all will be okay with that, because sometimes I'll be swearing. And I started out in advertising. I learned a lot while I was at Wieden & Kennedy, which is an ad agency, and also worked at 2 Shark Tank companies, which hopefully I can talk a little bit more about my experience there soon. And look forward to continuing working with amazing designers. I've worked with Sagmeister and Walsh and Mother and a whole bunch of awkward name drop agencies that I can totally do. But yeah, I'm really excited to be here on this beautiful Sunday, very hot Sunday in sunny New York City.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us. We're really excited to have you here. And I think that you're really exemplary of the way that so many designers aren't just, don't just have one background, one specialization. There's so much and so many influences that shape who we are. So it's really exciting to bring all of that to the table today. So I'd love to give our final panelist a chance to introduce himself. So Dylan, if you'd like to share a little bit about why you're here today.
Hey everyone, I'm Dylan. I currently work at the intersection of branding and product design. And being a young person, especially a young professional, I know kind of the experience and kind of the mental barriers that we go through as designers to try to navigate, try to find that right career path. And I'm looking forward to sharing my experiences, the barriers I went through in school, to be able to kind of help you guys navigate through the job journey. So I really appreciate y'all inviting me on as a panelist to be able to speak on these things.
All right, thank you so much. And I'll just add, if you folks wouldn't mind not annotating the screen, I don't know if you're aware, it does show up for everybody. So no more drawing, please. Thank you. Awesome. Yeah, and I know that Dylan is a really important person to have with us here today, because he has a really great story about coming into design from a non-traditional path and background. And he's going to share a little bit of that story, but I know for me, it can be really intimidating seeing people who are, so well established. And so I think it's really great to have a voice like Dylan's here sharing what it's like to be in the process of shaping that success and that career. So our group discussions, this will be the section after the panel. So just wanted to, share these before I pull my screen share down and let the panelists spotlight. But we'll be doing small group discussions. I think given the size of the group, we might be looking at maybe even just 2 rooms. I think we'll decide, once we get there, but I think 10 or 15 participants per room would be good. And we'll be having a discussion for about 30 minutes. So we'll be considering the themes that our panelists will touch on and considering how they intersect with or differ from your own. And so I would just remind you in these small group discussions to be respectful, mindful, and engaged. That portion of the event will not be recorded, but this portion here where we're chatting with the panelists will be. So I'll just give a reminder to everybody when we start and stop recording. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen, and Nina, I'm going to unpin you, and I'm going to go ahead and leave myself up to moderate. Thank you all very much one more time. Really excited to have you here today, and it looks like we're ready to kick off our discussion. So to our 3 panelists, I'll ask you, how has your identity, if it has, impacted your experience throughout job hunting, recruiting, hiring? What structures are in place that shape designers' experiences throughout the process?
I'll go. you know, when I started at Pratt for my master's in industrial design, I was actually one of the very few women in industrial design. And I remember going, a group of students, fellow students of mine, mostly men. In fact, I think it was even, I feel like it was even less than 10% women in industrial design. And I remember people going around the room asking, you know, everybody talking about why they were in industrial design. And I remember a whole bunch of guys, just when it came to me, the last one in the group, they were like, why are you in design? Why don't you go do something else? Like, why are you here? And it just got me to realize that, you know, people didn't realize who could be successful in industrial design. And I think that just made me more tenacious in wanting to prove to them that I would understand how to succeed in industrial design. And it wasn't easy, you know, not necessarily having the technical proficiency that others had at the moment. And it just got me to, you know, build those capabilities. I think that there are injustices, absolutely. And this is what I love about this discussion and what's happening in the world today, realizing injustice. But at the same time, I think that in balancing, understanding what injustice is out there, I think there's a combination of building our own resilience and tenacity. And I just love this discussion. No matter what injustice we find, we need to speak up about it, but also at the same time, build up your own capabilities as much as you can. So that's my take on that. Yeah.
Dylan, you want to go next or should I?
You can go ahead. I'll go after you.
Okay. So I grew up in Temecula, California. Has anybody heard of Temecula, California? It's not very well known. It's basically known for its casual racism, as well as the hometown of Olivia Rodrigo, who has been all over TikTok with her hit single that's reached the #1 Billboard hit called Driver's License. So I was pretty much the only person that looked like myself in a quite large school and quite large town. No one really looked like me. No one really sounded like me, but I also never really felt brown. I always felt like there's a joke in the Indian community of like feeling like a coconut, like brown and hairy on the outside and white on the inside. And that's like my struggle and battle with like, and realization that I'm brown. It has been like an interesting one because I didn't really realize that I was brown and come into my own until I started at UCLA and started like really like pursuing my passions. I started in advertising in internships, but I was actually studying business economics because as somebody who comes from my descent, you're usually a doctor, an engineer, a business person, or a failure. And so I basically had to go into business and then do some jujitsu to go into advertising after I graduated. And like for me, like I've always had a code switch all my life, and I'm sure a lot of the POC folks have had to do that. And I've always had a code switch all my life. But like when I was a young designer, copying others was a huge draw. Like I wanted to be like, oh, all my friends were getting jobs. I'm going to create work just like that, right? And so what ended up happening, and what has been continuing to happen, is like one designer creates like a trend or a fad, I guess, which will last for like 2 years, and then everyone sees, oh wow, that's become really popular. Clients start asking for the same thing because they're like, oh, that brand is starting to get really great. Oh, Casper is really great. Let me copy, branding like that. And then you have like this idea of blending where everything looks the same. And you all might have similar feelings as me. And experiences where you're like, wait, this person's doing better than I am. My best friend or whatever, who has a very different resume, just got a job at this like amazing place, like this amazing agency or client or whatever. Like, why don't I do the exact same thing that they did in order to get the job, right? So the imposter syndrome has been very real for me, to the point where like I literally was like whitewashing my resume. Like you all are familiar with Swiss design, with the grid, and there's a certain look about Swiss design where you can immediately know that there's a grid. And so I literally whitewashed my resume to literally copy like one of the pages of a Swiss design book that I had, because I'm not I didn't learn design traditionally. So I bought a bunch of books and like try to copy. And interestingly enough, I wasn't getting jobs that way. And it wasn't until I started like coming into my own and being more unique and being my full self that I like started getting gigs. I think part of my personality also, and you'll probably realize this as we're chatting, is like going against the grain and just accepting challenges. So like sometimes I'm okay being the only one or the other, but I realize that is not easy, to say the least, for a lot of other folk. So I'm very passionate about getting more people that look and sound like me and whatnot. There's an interesting thing that you're probably gonna y'all are probably gonna have to face, which is this term cultural fit. Somebody's like, oh, are you a good cultural fit? Which is basically a coded racism term for are you white and a man and look just like the people that are already at the company, right? And so what I really encourage all y'all to do is to be a cultural contributor, which is a fancy over intellectualized term that essentially means be unique. Each of you all have your own like kind of like things that make you the unique being that you are. And so I encourage y'all to triangulate that stuff and have that reflect across your portfolio and everything else. Like basically show people that you can do the work if you're called upon to like do work that's similar to others, but say that's easy. I want to actually show you that I can go more than that. And I think a lot of people get stuck in that middle zone where they're not sure how to not only do work that's similar to others, but also come into their own. And I think that process came very quickly for me. When I was at Wyden, I learned within the first hour I was there, basically like, okay, I need to be myself. It's okay to be myself. And I encourage y'all to do the same. But that's it. I'm end of soapbox, end of rant.
That was very good, Ritesh. As for me, kind of my journey as a designer was kind of somewhat different from the traditional way that people usually become designers. I actually come from a background in graphic design. I have been doing graphic design probably the last 13 years, but kind of I got introduced to ID right. I was at my freshman year of college by a friend who actually came to a restaurant. I wound up asking, it was just a random conversation. I ended up asking him about the chain that he had on. He was like, I made this in industrial design, at this local university that we have. So I ended up, kind of going into that program, kind of having, I would say, thoughts about a designer. I didn't know if I wanted it to be a career path. Because I know at the beginning of college, I didn't quite choose design as a career path. I knew I didn't want to go into graphic design because I felt like I had already learned some type of skill, some type of ability about graphic design. And I also knew that I didn't want to go into engineering because kind of my past experience in high school, I was part of an engineering academy, and I seen that, civil engineering, aerodynamics, all these different things was kind of boring. I knew I wanted to do some type of design that would make an impact. So I enrolled in a design program at a local university. And 2 years into the program, I was kind of hit with a hard decision that I had to make. As far as due to shifting responsibilities in my life, due to kind of the economic stress that was upon me because I had to be kind of fully responsible for myself. 2 years into the program, I had to kind of make choice to kind of switch out, to kind of be able to focus on those responsibilities in my life. And it was extremely hard, experience and a hard decision. It kind of built a lot of resentment and a lot of regret. And also it kind of influenced even imposter syndrome because here I am, here I am in having to choose to minor in industrial design, right? And also at the same time, still connect myself to that discipline, connect myself to that department. And and through me doing that, I experienced a lot of imposter syndrome. Kind of having to kind of find a way to strategize and pioneer that route as a designer for myself. And I knew, and it was really challenging mentally because I was oftentimes kind of compare myself to the journey of others. You know, I didn't feel at first that my route as a industrial designer, I didn't feel like it was sustainable enough, because I kind of look at the narrative, you know, kind of the educational system has around design, that you have to go through, you know, the 4-year program of industrial design in order to be a successful industrial designer. But here I am, you know, minoring in the program, but I kind of find ways of strategizing, you know, kind of hacking the educational system to the point to where you know, I got connected to the professors in the program at the local university, and you know, kind of asking the professor, you know, between business classes to sit in on design classes, you know, and through that I was able to learn, you know, CAD, you know, 3D modeling, you know, having people that, you know, that really believed in me, supported me in my journey, you know, having professors that was willing to give me feedback on projects, and even the projects that they was learning in the program, I was able to go back home and build my own personal projects around those things to learn design, to be able to kind of supplement for that gap in my education. But it really kind of built that imposter syndrome, because I know that, like, in the job search of finding jobs, mostly, you know, industrial design applications, you know, the requirement of a 4-year degree, you know, kind of all these different set of qualifications that you need, you know, and a challenging part for me was being able to believe that a company would be willing to value me and invest in me based on my experiences. But I know, I know later on, probably in the next set of questions, I'll be able to kind of share, you know, what I did to kind of overcome those barriers.
Wow, thank you so much for sharing your insights. Yeah, I really appreciate I think the variety of different backgrounds that we've got today, folks coming in from different perspectives. I did also want to mention as well, somebody asked about closed captioning. We're not able to provide that live today, but it will be CC'd on the YouTube video after the fact, and we will look into getting the API for closed captioning for our next event. So thank you so much for that question. Yeah, do we have any other insights that anyone would like to share on identity and its impact on the job hunt, or would we like to move on to the next question?
Can I say something? I think in all the work that I've done in working with creative professionals, almost everybody has some version of imposter syndrome. And I think that wherever our background, whatever our experiences, I love that we talk about this, because we all have our own perceptions of it. I've had people say to me, you know, is it my nationality? Is it my age? Is it my gender preference? Is it what country I'm coming from? And I think that you have to be proud. I mean, yeah, it's about tenacity and resilience. And I love the stories that we're going to be hearing and sharing today, because I think there will be injustice, but you want to push through and recognize, you know, believe in your compassion, your passion for this industry, but then understand that a lot of times, actually, your employer, your client may not understand you and your gift, and it's knowing how to convey that to them and showing them how you know, your passion for your work, and pushing through and building the skills that you know you'll need to deliver what they need, you know. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that actually does lead in really nicely into our next question, which is how to achieve all of those wonderful things. So so I'll give our panelists a chance to share with you some tips or skills that they have for how to achieve success while hunting for a job, how to balance your mental health with the stresses of that process, and basically how to be resilient. So I'll let them take it away.
I could start. And just, how long do we have? 8 hours, right? This panel's 8 hours. I'll just keep going. I'll just keep going.
8 to 10.
So the first thing I think is important is like finding a job, right? So like using the right resources for you. So here's what I recommend. AngelList. Check out AngelList. Great for startups. I've got two past jobs from there. If you use LinkedIn, basically request a lot of people that you want to potentially work with in like 5 years and then hit them up in 5 years. Don't do the thing where like you request somebody and then immediately message them saying like, hey, do you have a job? Don't do that because it sucks. Like you want to follow them and just like kind of be in the know of like what they've been up to and send them messages that are like genuinely nice and helpful. I typically am not very formal with my messages to people. I don't say like, dear whom it may concern, whatever. I like say, hey, what's up, y'all? Like, amazing fucking day, like sunshine emoji. How are you? It would be great to work together sometime. You know what I mean? Just let it sit. A lot of people, particularly designers, tend to be a little bit more, I guess, introverted than, actually, that's the wrong word. Introvert is the wrong word. Tend to be a little bit less outgoing than like, let's say, a salesperson. So you just you all have to kind of overcome that a little bit if you can. The other thing I like to do is I like to watch Shark Tank, and there's a lot of great products, some really shitty products on there, I'll be honest with you, but there's some good industrial design stuff on there if I may be so bold. And so if you watch Shark Tank, just like hit up the companies that like just got funding, and like from one of the sharks, and you're like, oh, I actually really like this company, like I want to work for you. I've gotten 2 of my last jobs from doing that, Hungry Harvest and Pet Plate. I just like email them on a Saturday because no one's emailing on a Saturday, and just say like, hey, I would love to work with you. It sounds like you need to overhaul your website or branding or whatever, and it worked. The other things is I would try to recommend branding yourself. So this is like a whole thing, but like figure out stuff that's unique to you, that only you can own, right? And choose a typeface. I'm going to get really nerdy now. Choose a typeface that's like uniquely you. Like, let's talk about typography for a second. So the first thing that a lot of us have to do when we're considering branding ourselves or whatnot is choosing a piece of type, right? And we shouldn't necessarily immediately try to go to Google Fonts or Adobe Typekit. Like, try to find something that's outside of those norms, because that's what everyone else is using. So there's actually an amazing Black type designer and Foundry owners Notion document that I can drop in the chat. And I highly recommend like just checking that out and trying to support those folks. Obviously, if you don't find a typeface that feels right for you, you don't have to feel like you should be pressured, but I highly encourage you to use these resources that are available first and then go to other ones that are more common. Like for all you industrial designers, you might be working with like a packaging designer or a branding designer. Like I would just recommend give that document to them to consider and be like, hey, prove to me that you can't find an amazing typeface by a Black or brown or like non-binary designer first, then we'll consider the other type. That's so hard to do. It's a lot easier said than done. And I've had to push myself to make sure I consider that first, but like force them to do that. Like force them to try or encourage them to do it. And if you're already in the middle of a project, like your next question should be like, why didn't you choose this typeface? Like, I really love it. And have the branding person, like if you're not the person doing the branding, have them like justify their decision. There's very few acceptable answers to that because it's very, like I said, there's a lot of choices. Basically, if Massimo Vignelli can build an entire career on 6 typefaces, Garamond, Bodoni, Century Expanded, Times, Futura, and Helvetica, you definitely can find a typeface for you. Like, you don't give me excuses. And if you need help finding a typeface for you, I'm happy to be a resource. The other thing specifically, and this is more for people who are on the hiring side / our allies, is like, we need to overhaul our design language to be like more inclusive for getting people who are underrepresented in the industries, right? So we shouldn't be using the term white space, right? The term like white space that you learn in Design 101, like it's basically refers to an empty artboard basically. And it's like very much white. The term white space is very much revered. Like, oh man, how could I push this to as minimal as possible? And like, that's just a racist term, right? You basically, you mean to tell me like the instant I touch an artboard, I'm infringing on white space, right? I'm not trying to over intellectualize it, but like we should be using different language than like these terms that we have to unlearn. And that's just one of them. So like use the term empty space or something like that, right? So these are all these terms that like can come up during like design critiques or like whatever that are just like extra extra check marks that a person of color or a non-binary person is just saying, yep, just experience that. Yep, just experience that, and then leave. So, and they probably won't tell an HR person that they're leaving due to discrimination, even though we have to put up with it a lot. So that's a little bit of like what I want to impart, at least in the beginning conversation, but like I have like other things I'm happy to talk about too. But yeah, Dylan or Angela, agree, disagree?
I thought Ritesh brought up a lot of great points. Own your own style. Absolutely. I actually love, when I think about Ritesh talking about, Ritesh mentioned earlier about copying, there is a point, I think, where when you start out in your career, you kind of want to know, what does the industry want? What's trending? Because to some degree, let me tell you that employers sometimes do, I've heard so many stories where employers have come to us, or even the consultants that, the consultancy owners that we work with, they'll say, their clients will say, hey, this is like a classic. Apple did this, or Nest did that. Go do what give me a copy of what they did. And sometimes you get business clients who don't get it, and they just want to copy what's trending. That's actually the cheapest, easiest way for them to come up with an idea. And sometimes you have to give them that as a consultant, talking and working with design leaders. Sometimes you have to give them what they think they want, but then also give them what they need, which they don't realize they're capable of getting from you, some unique design and unique ideas. So it's about knowing what your own vision is. And I think that's a balance of also knowing how to give them what a client, sometimes that's all they're looking for. You've got some businesses that are short-sighted. You get a lot of businesses that want that quick win. They don't realize that they can actually build their own, working with you, they can have a unique look and feel, a unique solution, innovation that's, just helps them create their own identity better, their own brand. And sometimes it's knowing how to walk that fine line. I totally blanked on the other question.
You're good. No, I mean, I'm hearing that it's really important, to have diversity in our design groups because of this, because everybody brings their own unique experience to the table. And by having people with more backgrounds, you end up with a more productive, ability to create really novel stuff. The question we were kind of discussing was just tips or recommendations for current job seekers and how to navigate the industry, on how to find that first job.
One thing I do want to say is, having worked with employers, I've met companies where whether they're even just sharing that they're about to post something, whether they're even going to post it with us as a recruitment agency or not, we've had employers where they don't even know how to frame the opportunity that they're looking to fill. Let me just say, having worked with employers and talent, I've come to, starting out my passion, because I was a designer, myself, my perspective is how to laud and bring the right creative to the table and help employers understand their value. And each one of us brings a unique flavor to the table. But from an employer standpoint, there's also challenges where they're anxious. There's so many choices. They don't know which designer is going to bring them the ability that they need, solve that problem, help them, complete that initiative. And a lot of times you get employers that don't even know how to write the job description. So I think, I don't know who had mentioned it earlier. One thing that I've come to notice is most professionals, we look at that job description like it's the Bible. And let me tell you, employers kind of use the same template. I've had clients that would say, well, actually, this was another design job description, or marketing job description, or an engineering job description. We added some some skills in there. Or sometimes they'll say, we threw everything in. And then we looked at them and we're like, yeah, you're really not going to get visionary thinking and hands-on CAD and, organizational design and UX and ID and engineering all in one. Sometimes you have to just realize that employers also, and clients, if you're running your own consultancy, same thing. A lot of times these businesses don't know what they really need. So it's knowing how to listen to them, kind of almost see what they don't know how to articulate. And I'd also say that when you speak to them, employers and clients, they always put that best face forward. Oh, we're amazing. Culture is great. they're always marketing. And that, I think, is a challenge for employers and clients, because sometimes they don't realize that if they actually tell you what's going on that's not working, that's how you can really understand how you can help them better. And so it's knowing how to read through that, and understand what is it that they really are struggling with that they can't articulate.
Yeah, I think those are some excellent tips, 100% for finding that that opportunity for you to come in and not just say, hey, I can meet this need that you have, but I've identified a whole brand new need that I can come solve for you. I think that's such a really powerful strategy. All right, I'd like to give Dylan a chance to close us out with his recommendations and tips and skills. And then I think we'll wrap the conversation up and head into our small group discussion. So Dylan, I'd love to hear your recommendations.
I really liked it, something that Ratish had actually brought out about learning to brand yourself. I think kind of from my point of view, kind of being a person that's into design, but also a person that experienced design from a business side. I see a lot of students and a lot of people that graduate don't really know how to, I would say, brand themselves or market themselves. And this is one thing that Angela actually brought out, I believe, in the dry run of this session, was kind of being able to know how to represent yourself, being able to know kind of your audience and the industry that you want to work in. What's really important is like building personal projects around the industry that you would like to work in, and finding ways to be able to get that work before those people, those design directors, those creative directors. And also kind of one thing that kind of helped me in my journey with opportunities is also like on LinkedIn. I kind of go insane on LinkedIn, like with connecting with people. I'll find a company that I want to work for, a company that, I would like to kind of contribute to on projects. I'll kind of find their design director, their creative director, and I'll just let them know, hey, I exist. Hey, I'm open, for work opportunities in the future. And through those type of things, I was able to really, kind of get opportunities. But the thing is, us designers need to understand and learn that we have to play the long game, with relationships, and not just be like generic, and not just be pitchy when reaching out to creative directors or reaching out to people, but having genuine conversations and building genuine relationships. And I know, like, of recently, a design director that I reached out to probably a year ago, didn't have any job opportunities open, didn't have any, projects I was able to work on. But last month, reached out to me based on me reaching out to them a year prior. And once I went through the interview process with that company, she really began to tell me in the interview that she valued my consistency in reaching out. And not only through that, also branding yourself by, sharing your work, not just sharing the final product, sharing your thinking, writing articles. All these type of things are really important to kind of build your potentiality around being a prospect or candidate for a job. I know through that, kind of recently, I was able even to get invited on for an interview at a startup as a brand designer, kind of through finding ways to market myself as a designer. And another thing I would like to add is being willing to adapt, and that's kind of was a big point for me, a big turning point in my career as a designer, kind of finding a way to navigate through that career. We got to understand that this process, a career is a journey. And, you kind of have to try a lot of things out, experiment. And I know that was a big thing for me because, I kind of didn't know what area of design I wanted to get into. I knew I was passionate about branding. I knew I was passionate a little bit about marketing, passionate about user experience and product design. But the thing is, you can never have too much skill. You can never have too much abilities. And really what it's going to do is going to help you bring different perspectives to the table, especially in industrial design. When I've worked on projects, on freelance projects with people, I was able to kind of communicate at the intersection of design and business. I was able to communicate about design strategy, but also about business and brand strategy and how it influences the design process. So, all those things, all those skills and capabilities that you can learn through adapting and taking on jobs and opportunities, it can only strengthen your resume. It can only strengthen your portfolio. It's nothing is wrong with being a unicorn. I kind of look at myself as a design unicorn. It's kind of rare that you find somebody that kind of understands a lot of different disciplines of design. But another thing I would like to add, give me 1 second. Very sorry, I was looking at my notes. Another thing I would like to add is, well, I think that's enough. I'm sorry. We can go ahead. Sorry.
No need to apologize. No, you're fine. We can also continue chatting about these in the small group discussions because they'll just be an extension of this conversation. But yeah, before we move into those, does anyone want to add anything else? Okay. Sounds good. Yeah, Dylan, I definitely will dig into that in our little group discussions as well. So we're gonna sort y'all into rooms of I think we've got 12 attendees each. I guess it's 10 attendees, and then you've got a moderator and our panelist as well. So these will be randomized. But we're going to give you a chance to kind of follow up on the discussion and consider the questions that we asked the panelists. How has your identity impacted your experience, and what tips do you have? But we'd also love to hear from the attendees as well. What are your key takeaways? How are you balancing your mental health? And really use these panelists as a resource to discuss, your experiences throughout the process. Ask them about, their own skills. And to our panelists, really feel free to share your wisdom and insights and in a really more of a back and forth in these discussions. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and open all rooms. They should automatically close after 25 minutes. So enjoy your small group discussions. The main room will be available if anybody needs to step out and take a second for yourself. All right, feel free to join your breakout rooms. All right, so thank you so much for everybody who participated in the event, who joined our small group conversations, everyone who felt like they wanted to chime in. Thank you for sharing, and everyone who listened in. I hope that you learned some really valuable skills today. I wanted to take a chance to circle back, and this time is for all of our attendees to share back what you learned, what you valued. We'll be posting this conversation on YouTube after the fact. So since those small group conversations were confidential, we still want to share what we learned with the world at large. So I'll start off by sharing a really great tip from Dylan, which is, navigating the world of social media through the lens of admiring but not desiring, seeing great stuff but not letting it make you jealous or feel competitive, but just, supporting that other people are out there doing great things to kind of keep your mental health balanced and in check. But yeah, I'll just open up the floor. What did you learn today?
I didn't really follow the directions and I just talked a lot. So I didn't really learn like as much as I probably could have if I shut up. But something that I did learn about our little microcosm was that there was a lot more people in the room that I was in that like are actually happily employed. I was personally like prepared for like pretty much everybody to be like, I hate my job. I'm trying to look for another job. And like, please tell me how, and so I wasn't really super prepared for that. So, and I think there's like a lot of interesting things about like how to impart advice and whatnot for people who are like gainfully employed as well as like ungainfully employed or unemployed or the various variations. So that's something that I'll say. I feel like I talked a lot and I hope the people in my room like learn something. I'm not fishing for a compliment. I'm just like saying I genuinely hope that you all learn something.
I think Ritesh has the coolest personality. I love you. You're so awesome. I love it. Be true to yourself for sure. Absolutely. Have fun. Enjoy life while you move through this all.
It's a Sunday. What the hell, man? Like, it's a Sunday. Come on. It's the day of rest. We should be having a blast when talking about these difficult topics.
Absolutely. Hear, hear.
I know something that came up too in our chat was like how important therapy and like professional mental health resources are to like staying resilient and how like a lot of us who are, partake in therapy are able to like take skills from therapy and apply them into like navigating conflicts in the real world. So yeah, that was just something that I think resonated a lot with me.
There's a great book that a good friend of mine, Julie Pimsler, has just written. It's called Go Big Now. I think as a career coach, everyone I meet has some kind of imposter syndrome. We all have issues and experiences that have really given us some kind of fixed and limiting belief, and then how to distinguish between what are our fixed and limiting beliefs versus what's an imposter syndrome that's not real, and how to be tenacious. And I highly recommend Julia's book, or in paperback or in audio. That just it's one of the tools that I use with my clients actually, now that she's published it. So it's just, in addition to all the things that we're going to experience, you want to know how to be aware. I think therapy is absolutely important. I'm going to admit to you that I've, throughout my career, my life, it's not just about career, I've gone to therapy, and it's a great vehicle for us to, have someone who officially holds space for us to just look at that and just to call that out. Because when you're able to speak about something that affects you, even if we're, you think that we're also conscientious and logical and visionary because we're creatives, that we could just walk ourselves through this logically, but mental trauma, that's an emotional process. That you kind of need external help to pull that out and help us hold space for us as we move and extract that. So I think therapy is important, and then I think mindset work is important as well.
Yeah, and something I want to share a little story about myself about mental health, because I've had I think hopefully have an experience that like can resonate with some of y'all. Like when I actually have had and struggled with anxiety pretty much all my life, and when I brought her to my family, close family, mom and dad, right, they were very actually dismissive, like, oh, it's not that big of a deal, like you don't have to worry about it, like it's just a phase, there's like all those things that like tend to be like some of those like typical like really, that's not the thing I should be hearing right now type of responses. And the reason that it's manifested itself into anxiety and sometimes actually deep depression is because I was unhappy and didn't feel supported, and insurance gets difficult with paying for therapy, all these types of things. And it's ironic because actually my partner is a mental health therapist, but it can be very difficult. And the way I found breathing space within to battle some of these things is reading forums, finding people that like are similar to me or going through similar experiences, and just reading about it. And just knowing that like you're not the only one. And once you're at a place where you can step back out in the world and like actually conquer it again, you make sure you have you make sure that you've built up enough confidence to go back out in the world and let your feelings be felt, and not to immediately just try to go into a solution mode. And I think designers probably feel anxiety, depression, probably more than other industries, for imposter syndrome, being overworked, being underpaid, historical injustices, all that kind of stuff. And so I want to make sure I'm speaking to anybody who also has a similar experience, where oftentimes you hear, oh, just talk to somebody, or like, just do this, just do that. But if my parents ever found out that I was going to a therapist or something, it would be a very difficult conversation. It would be very difficult. Like, why are you doing this? It becomes a thing where, because a lot of people like in my kind of community, they want to brag about their offspring to other offspring while like at a dinner party, right? It happens all the time. And if they don't feel fully okay with like how their offspring, like their son is doing, that's one like check mark, right? Again, or like one strike against, right? So it's really important to understand that if you're feeling some certain way, there's probably a lot of other people feeling that certain way, but make sure you give yourself some time do you, and try not to allow the people who are dismissive to kind of rule your mental state and prevent you from kind of overcoming, trauma and whatnot. So yeah, that's my little story on that.
Ritesh, thank you for sharing that story. I think that's very similar to mine, where my parents didn't understand it and they would say, you don't need it. You're fine. You don't need it. And I think we're coming to this point where we're being this globally. I think as human beings, we're becoming so self-aware of what's happening to us and being able to see it and own it. And yeah, and some of us will have communities that won't accept it. Find the community that will. There are millions of people who are going through this right now, and being able to accept, and be able to do that self-work. It's crazy if you think about it. As we mature and we go through mistakes and challenges and trauma, life, this is about becoming resilient, but change is difficult. And how funny that as creative professionals, design is about coming up with the best solutions of change, right? And when you think about it, we all talk about iteration, right? Isn't life about iteration? But iteration is fucking hard, man. Especially when it happens to us and we're not ready for that shit. So understand how to be compassionate with yourself. Change is so hard. Come on, look at everyone around us. Every single person is going through change. And if we can if we can see ourselves moving through that change and be compassionate with ourselves, then you can understand what other people are going through and how they're trying to get through their change. And I mean this as in understanding and being compassionate to ourselves, but as well as to others. And with others, we're thinking, I think employers are others, businesses, clients, they are challenged as well. They're sometimes they're making the wrong judgment calls. Sometimes they don't know what they really need. Look at the people that you know around you. You can look at friends or even strangers, and you'll look at someone, you'll go, I know what they're stuck with, right? But not to look down on them or hate them. They may not get it, and they may throw, I don't know, shade on us, but you also have to realize that everybody else is going through their challenges as well. And just to realize that this is a crazy, kind of an amazing time too, though, because there's such compassion for everybody's going through it now. And we're all realizing how we're struggling to move through our own change. And I think as a designer, if you can understand your own change and have compassion for yourself, then you can understand how to see others and what they can't get about what they're trying to move themselves through, whether it's a company, whether it's an individual, a society.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that, Angela. Dylan, was there anything about mental health or syndrome, et cetera, that you want as we're preparing?
I can just piggyback off of what Angela had said, and also what Ritesh said. I know that kind of what helped me navigate through my journey, and still is helping me navigate through my journey, is therapy. Being able to speak about those things that you are going through internally. Because a lot of us don't come from families that I would say are emotionally aware. Or they have this one-stop fix. They tell you, just basically stop stressing. And they don't understand the day-to-day internal conflict. They don't understand the anxieties about, finding a job. The anxieties about, kind of the thought of, will I have a sustainable career path? Will I ever get there? That a lot of us go through as designers and creatives. But one thing I know that helped me out is kind of it's really two principles. Kind of like Angela said, being compassionate with yourself, being forgiving, to yourself. You may not have all the capabilities, you may not have the skills that you desire, but understanding that if you can be consistent and don't give up. Yeah, it's gonna be hard. It may not look like, where you desire to be just yet, but continuing to, to show up anyway, it's gonna allow you to grow in the end. And, and also forgiving life, forgiving life for not being all that it could have been. Forgiving life, it's a lot, like dealing with your economic status, your family background, all those different things play a factor in our emotional health. So I'm definitely behind, getting a therapist. So reaching out to somebody, like if you may have heard something from Ratish or Angela or anybody else, kind of finding somebody that you can confide in to talk to about your experiences, cause it's really gonna help. So that's all I have.
Yeah, I couldn't have summed it up better myself. I think that you guys really get to the core of how important resiliency and support is in succeeding. And I hope that we can all continue to be, that support and that community for each other. Design allyship and being our, we really want to be these kinds of spaces. So I really hope that we'll continue to see you guys at our future events. Thank you so much one more time to our phenomenal panelists and to everybody who helped make the event today possible. Big shout out to Jamie Morgan, who's usually our co-host and was today feeling under the weather and not able to join fully, but thanks for hopping in, and a big shout out as well to Tiffany and Hector and Nino and the rest of the advanced design team. I did want to, it looks like we've got a question to see if we can, yeah, folks are welcome to stay on and chat a little bit more afterwards if you're available. But I just want to wrap up in a timely manner for folks who do need to get out of here. So we'll post the recording of the event on YouTube. And then we did want everyone to know that we're going to go on a 2-month break to save some space for ourselves, to recuperate from planning events and to start planning our next series. So the next batch of dialogues events will be starting in August, and I'm really looking forward to having some really fantastic conversations. So I'll say for anyone who wants to stick around and keep chatting, you are more than welcome to. For those of you who have to go, thank you so much for your time today.
Oh, there was just one thing I wanted to add. I remember Angela saying that she wanted to be reminded of, I think it was like injustice in the work search. It was in terms of like, it was in terms of like, yeah, for sure.
Wait, injustice in the workspace, absolutely.
Yes. Go ahead. Sorry. Go ahead.
I forget what piece of that I was trying to remember to talk about. Here, just different to that, there's another topic that I just wanted to share. Right now, there are so many businesses hurting. So many businesses not understanding how to position themselves, how to restructure their business. Let me just say that during times of strife, business, let me just say the business world in general doesn't necessarily think that they need design as a resource. The notion is design is to create something new, build something new, create and design something. And not all businesses are in that mode of creation right now. I love how business world has taken so many of our words and reappropriated them. Sustainability in the corporate world means cut, insights, product design. I mean, it's just fascinating how our terminology gets reappropriated and defined. Right now, for a lot of you, there may be times where designing a design job may not be as available. If it's about making something, please make sure to think about your design skills in a different way, where it may be helping companies understand how to, be more sustainable in the sense of being more resourceful, modularizing, cutting down on costs, not just making something new. It's finding a new solution, not necessarily making more things. So that's just something I want you guys to keep in mind. And there is injustice everywhere. And the one thing, Nino, thank you for the trigger. I now remember, I've heard so many stories as a recruiter, as a career coach. I don't think I've heard, I never realized how many stories of injustice are out there. Every corporation, every consultancy, so many stories are out there, not just about, racism or gender inequality or bullying of any kind. And the crazy thing is, majority of people I hear these stories from, though they confine to me, I ask them, do you post it on Glassdoor? And most people don't. Until we start sharing these stories, the data is not going to grow and companies are not going to change what they're doing. So I beg of you to share your stories, on Glassdoor or any forum, so businesses can change. Until it's put out there, companies are not going to know how to change. There's an article that's out there now about what it's like at IDL. I mean, it's unbelievable. And until these stories are shared, when are they going to be called to speak to those actions? So please share your stories of injustice so that companies and businesses can improve. Okay.
And I want to build on this too, because I think there's a misconception, something that gets said a lot that can come off as kind of threatening is this, it's a small industry. And I hear this a lot when people are saying, I would come forward, but it's a small industry. And there's this perception that if you speak up, you'll be blackballed and you won't be able to have design jobs. You won't be able to make it in the industry. The industry is a huge place. I think that there's there's definitely a small group of really visible designers for sure, but I really think it's a matter of it's so much bigger than people like to perceive it as being. And so, when you hear that phrase, set aside that as a threat, and you can still come out, and then more so you'll be supported by much of the industry that does have their heart in the right place. And there are so many people for whom those stories of like the stories that are coming out about IDEO, for example, are being received with support, and people also coming forward about their own experiences. I would say, especially if you're in a position of any privilege, use that as a chance to talk about any injustices that you've encountered, especially on behalf of your colleagues who may not have the social capital to come forward themselves, who may fear losing their jobs as retribution. So yeah, definitely an opportunity to really speak up, and especially be a good ally there if you can.
Yeah, and one more thing, if anybody wants to talk about this stuff / the how to get a job / how to be happy, that kind of stuff, I'm really bored today, to be honest, and I'd rather not watch Breaking Bad for the 5th time on Netflix. Even though I did get this really dope Dolby Atmos surround sound system. So if anybody wants to chat somehow, whether it's on Zoom or whatever, I'm happy to chat, share the advice, share the wealth.
I love it. And thanks, y'all, for sharing so many links in the chat too. I've been saving these in a document, and I know we have a big collection of resources that our panelists have mentioned or shared at various points throughout the development process of this event. So we'd actually love to share those resources with the attendees too. So if y'all have any other resources that you would like to share out that you found really helpful, whether that's inspiration or anything like that, feel free to throw it in the chat, and we'll put that in the post event email. Do we have any other thoughts to close us out?
I think I'm good. Does any more questions that anybody has? Here's your chance. Ask the question.
I don't want to take too much time. I know we've already crossed the 1 hour mark, but I had a question regarding international, applying as an international student. So I'm from India. I'm born and brought up here. I studied here and everything. But if I had to apply for a job in the US or somewhere abroad, does it change? Would my process change? Would the way they look at me as an applicant change? Because of course, apart from the visa and the whole headache that comes with that, do they look at me differently as an international student as opposed to a person of color who's native to the US or something like that? So I want to understand how much it changes when I'm an applicant from outside of the US or outside of the country that I'm applying to.
Yes, it's much harder. If you have a international status where you've got to get sponsored, I'm going to be honest, it's much, much harder. Your skills have to be that much better. You've got to know that right now for I'm just speaking for US employers, right now with so many people, it's an employer's market a little bit right now, right? Anytime when there's a recession or depression, there's employers are going to not choose international as much as anyone that's already a U.S. citizen and or has some, citizenship, work, validation, right? It's just something that you're going to have to be ready for. Not to say that it's impossible though. And similar to, I think what Ritesh, I think, or Dylan had said is really find every time you're interviewing, find out. And, if there's a dream company that you want to work for, tell them, if you don't, first, obviously for everyone, your goal, let's say usually the goal ranking is get that full-time job, interview for the full-time job. If you can't, ask them if they will take you on a part-time level. If they can't take you part-time, is it contract? Or even if you can't get to the contract, sometimes if it's a dream company, can you even intern to get that proof of concept to be able to work with that dream company? Don't do it for everyone, right? Try to get it paid versus unpaid. But particularly ask and say, look, you're a company that I've always wanted to work for. What is it? Can you please tell me one day I want to work, get to the point, I want to improve on my skills so that I'm viable. What is it that you're looking for? What is the distance between where I am today and what do I need to build to get to that point? Right. I love the stories here where it's about tenacity. A lot of times employers don't need you at the moment, but maybe a year or two later. I've heard amazing stories where people said, you know what, I just kept going back to that company. While there's different companies where some of them I'll just take that job, but there's one or two dream companies. And I've always just kept, in touch with them and said, look, one day, what can I do to work for you? And tenacity is amazing. That's what's impressed people. It's tenacity and resilience, right? That confidence in knowing I will do this and I'm going to work in this industry doing, being this kind of designer. And ideally I'd like to do it with you. And if not, let's, show me what you need, so.
That was
Thank you.
wonderful.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, I actually think that's a really perfect note to end on is just this, the overall theme of resilience and tenacity and, the inevitability of encountering challenge across, the journey, but that we will pull through using skills and self-care and supportive communities. Oh my gosh, thank you guys all so much for being part of this conversation. Please feel free to share your contact info in the chat below, connect with each other offline, follow through on these conversations, outside of this room. We'd love for you to connect with each other. So really appreciate everybody. I'll go ahead and put my Instagram and all that good stuff in the chat. And as well, feel free to find folks on LinkedIn. Awesome. And I can leave this again. I know folks, if you want to keep chatting and stuff, I'm happy to leave this up just for a couple of minutes, let everybody, get contact info. And then I think we'll, in the interests of respecting everyone's time, we'll call it a day and close out. But just again, thanks everybody so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah. Awesome.
Bye.
All right. Thanks. We hope to see you at our next event. Bye.